Hi there, Serdar here for InfoWorld at IDG. Today in Smart Python we have part 2 of our ongoing series where we build a very simple social network application in Python. Now when we last left off, we'd created the first and biggest underpinning for our application, its data structure. We used an ORM, or Object Relation Mapper, a database framework, to describe what the data for our app would look like. And we created the database for it using the SQLite database provided with Python. We also generated and stored some sample social network posts to go into the database. But we didn't make any of this available to an end user through a web interface, which is how most social networking apps work. So in this installment, we're going to create a simple, very simple, web interface to display the posts that we have. This will give us an introduction to using web frameworks in Python generally. And for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to use a web framework I've featured in previous videos, a very small framework called Bottle. It includes all the pieces we need to get our app up and running and doesn't include anything we don't need. We'll start by adding Bottle to the dependencies in our project and upgrading our project's virtual environment to match. And next, we'll create the bare bones of our web application. For starters, this will just be a single page, the home page. Web frameworks typically work by letting you define a route or a path that's visited by a web browser. Each of these routes is associated with a function, so when someone visits that route, they receive the output of that function. The output might change, for instance, if we capture variables from the route and use them as input to the function, or if we took in a form submission from the browser and used the data in there. Again, for now, we're just going to have a single route, the home page, with no variables taken in. All we do with this route right now is return hello world to the client, just to make sure the route's functional. The route's defined by way of a decorator, the route decorator, which wraps the function we want to associate with a particular route. The run command starts up the web framework and sets it listening for connections on the port and the address we provide. An address of all zeros means we're listening for connections incoming from every client, not just the local host. So when we run this and we navigate to localhost port 8000, we see hello world. A good start. Now we can start building a little more of our app's intended functionality. And to do this, we're going to do two things. We're going to use our database layer to read the messages we have in our database, and then pass them along to a template, a feature of our web framework that lets us generate HTML from data and return it to the client. Web frameworks all have slightly different ways of handling templating. Some don't handle templating at all. Instead, you rely on third-party templating engines like Jinja 2 that you can drop in. Bottle has its own built-in templating system, and it's simple and straightforward enough for what we're doing that we'll use it. Templates are generally just HTML interspersed with special commands to the templating engine. In this templating system, any line that starts with a %sign is treated as Python code. Because indents aren't preserved in these templates, this template system lets us use the end keyword to indicate where Python code block ends. And anything in double curly braces is treated as a Python expression, where the output of that expression is placed into the template at that point. Again, every templating system tends to function a little differently, so the way that the templating system in your web framework of choice may function may not resemble this too closely, but the basic idea is the same. What this template here does is it takes in a variable, messages, and then performs a for loop on all of the items in messages. And for each of the messages that are generated from messages, we return to the client some HTML with the message user's name, the date of the message, and the message body. There's something worth singling out here, by the way, about the way our database ORM works. Each message stores the ID of the user who posted it as the user property. With this ORM, if I want the actual name of that user, I can just say user.name, and the ORM automatically looks the name up and returns it. This saves us the hassle of having to do that manually, and since we perform these kinds of cross lookups all the time, it's quite handy. The way we invoke this template in our route function looks like this. We just call the template function in Bottle and supply the name of the template file and the references to the variables used in the template. Our messages variable is the result of a query that we made with our ORM, where we select all of the messages in our database and sort them in descending order by their date. Now let's fire this up and take a look. And as you can see, we now have an HTML formatted list of all of the messages in the database. There's one little thing missing so far, though. Back in my first installment, I talked about how we needed to have some provision in our data design to indicate whether a message was a reply to another message. Our original data design didn't include this, so I had to modify the data design to add it. And here, we do have that in our data design, but we're not showing any information about whether or not a message is a reply in our template. So let's go back and edit our template and insert a condition to do that. If the reply to field in a message is not blank, then we'll insert some HTML that says reply to, along with the name of the user and the replying message. And so when we save this and restart our application, as you can see, we now see that information shown as part of our message stream. Now, obviously, we are still a very long way from a fully functional app here. We don't even have a mechanism for making new messages. We don't have a way to even log in as a given user. And our HTML is very vintage 1996 at best. But all of these are things that we will work on in the coming installments, so stick around. That's it for this video. If you liked it, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to the IDG Tech Talk channel on YouTube. And for more Python tips, and also for more Dev with Serdar generally, be sure to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Infoworld.com.